Mine was much simpler. What are your goals in these sessions, Mr. Berriman? He asked. My goal is to get them over with, I said. Our spirit guide frowned. Mr. Berriman, do you really have no interest in working on your issues that brought your marriage to this point? I'm sorry, Mr. Rodman, but it wasn't my issues that brought my marriage to this point. And I really do have no interest in working on them. I am quite happy with my issues and fully intend to die with them. Rachel was quite as horrified as Mr. Guru, and did not hesitate to plunge in boldly. Oliver, how do you expect to get back to where we were if you aren't willing to at least discuss this? I don't, I said. Let me make it clear to you both. I give zero crap about getting back to where we were or working on issues. I'm here because of a court order. I will do what it takes to satisfy that court order, then we'll go back to court and get divorced. That's my plan. Are you aware that if I go back to the judge and report that you refuse to cooperate, you could be cited for contempt? Mr. Pathgite said. I'm not aware of that, I said. Do you mean if you go back to the judge and lie? These sessions are being recorded. I'm sure my attorney would be happy to subpoena the recordings and expose your perjury. I'm here, I'm doing whatever you say to do. You've asked me my goals. I told you what they are. See, I'm cooperating. He flushed. I'm sure the judge expected you to try to work out the issues between you, he said. I'm not responsible for the judge's expectations, I told him. I'm only responsible for mine. He tried to make it difficult. He gave me homework that included spending considerable time with Rachel, and she worked diligently to wear me down. Oliver, what will it take for you to drop the divorce and work this out? She asked. An act of God, I told her. She waited for me to explain that, but I said nothing. What do you mean, an act of God? She finally asked. Well, if you have a way to turn back time and not cheat with dear old Jerry, that would work, I said. Otherwise, I've never heard of anyone other than God with that power. Have you developed powers you haven't told me about, Rachel? Well, other than the power to attract other men with your feminine charms. We slogged on dreary exercise after mindless mantra, and finally they were over. We went back to court, and the judge asked if we had made any progress. Your Honor, there is no possibility that my client is going to remain married to his wife, Elizabeth Baxter said. We would like to see this divorce granted as expeditiously as possible. My client and his daughter have been dragged through this process long enough. Evidently, the judge agreed because 10 days later the decree came in the mail. Toby saw her mother quite a bit, since she loved her grandparents and spent a lot of time with them. Rachel occasionally planned something that Toby would consent to do with her, but it was never the same. She hung with her friends, and one in particular seemed to be at the top of her list. She was a tiny little blonde thing named Sabrina. Seemed like she practically lived with us. She was cute as a month-old kitten, and as sweet as honey. I was happy to have her, and they began to include me in some of their activities. One of the things they loved was water skiing. We had a boat, and when summer vacation started, most Saturdays would find us at one of the nearby lakes. On a Monday, they asked me if we could go to the lake for the weekend, take our RV, and stay until Sunday evening. Since my social calendar wasn't exactly jammed, I thought it was a great plan. Toby and Sabrina spent the week planning, and we packed everything they wanted on Thursday. Friday afternoon, a new red Jeep Cherokee pulled up in our driveway, and Sabrina jumped out. A nearly identical female jumped out of the driver's side, and Toby went and threw herself on this unknown female in a robust hug. She and Sabrina led the unknown and clearly nervous one to me. Dad, Toby said, this is Julie. She's Sap's mom, and I know you haven't met her yet. Julie extended her hand. Hello, Oliver. The girls have told me so much about you. Thank you so much for inviting me to go with you this weekend. To tell you the truth, I've been a little jealous that they spend so much time with you instead of me. She smiled up at me mischievously, and I instantly realized why her daughter was such a charming little minx. I looked over at Toby, and she gave me a fierce glare. My knees trembled and I knew when to cave. The trembling intensified when I looked at Sabs, and she gave me one raised eyebrow. It's going to be a blast, I told Julie, recovering the power of speech. We always have a great time. She was no dummy. She looked from me to the girls, then back at me. Oh my God, she said. You didn't know, did you, girls? She didn't have time to say another word. She was buried in an avalanche of hugs, kisses, and please. Please, Mom, don't worry about it. We're going to have so much fun from Sabrina. It's okay, Julie. Dad is going to love you as much as I do, and he's a great guy from Toby. Look how he just went along. She disentangled herself and looked them over. You two go sit on the porch and I'm going to talk to Oliver, she said. They showed some reluctance and she said now. They took her seriously and scurried away. I'm so sorry, Oliver. I had no idea, she said. I'm going to take Saps and leave. She's going to be grounded for a month. God, this is embarrassing. She looked so little and embarrassed that I stepped forward and hooked her. She stiffened at first, but then relaxed. Yes, it is embarrassing, I said. They are very naughty, but you and I both know there is no harm in them. Let me guess. You aren't married. She looked up at me and laughed. God, she was cute. No, I'm not. Do you think that's what this is about? I'm almost certain, I said. Here's the deal. You're packed. You've cleared your weekend. It's going to be gorgeous at the lake. I'm not a bad guy, which you know from being around Toby. Let's play along. It will be fun. We might tweak them a little. What do you say? She stepped back, looked over at the girls' expectant faces and said, Yeah, let's go. I gave them the thumbs up, and they leaped to their feet, rushing over to join us. I heard Toby come out with an exuberant yeet. I stopped them and took one under each arm. Pearls, that wasn't very nice, I said. Saps looked up at me and cackled in her best Skeletor voice. I am not nice. That broke us all up and I couldn't go on. They were just too cute and too innocent. We know what you're trying to do, I told them. Stop. I mean it. You can't just go around trying to arrange other people's lives. Yes, but I love Jules and I didn't know how to get you to meet her. Toby protested. Well, you could have just told me, I said. She looked a little sad. It's okay, kitten. Just don't do it again, I said. She brightened up immediately. Saps tugged on my arm. Let's go. I can't wait. This is going to be sick nasty, Oliver. You'll see. Julie laughed. I believe that's supposed to be the ultimate and really cool, Oliver. She's right, though. We're killing daylight. We grabbed 2 bags out of her Jeep and climbed in. We had the boat hitched, and after a stop for propane, we were on the way. It was half an hour to the lake, and Julie sat up front with me. The girls got some awful music playing through their Bluetooth connections and we got acquainted. Julie had her own insurance company, it turned out, and also did financial planning. I took her in as I glanced over at her in conversation. God, she was cute. I thought Saps would look just like her when she was Julie's age. She looked quite a bit younger than I was, but it turned out it was just 3 years. She was probably 5 feet nothing, had light blonde hair down to her lower back, and a nice tan going. She had huge brown eyes, high cheekbones, and a perfect little heart-shaped face, including a widow's peak and a broad forehead. She was wearing jeans and a button-up top, but she was slender and willowy. I didn't want to perv on her, so I really didn't check her out until we got to the lake. We got a slip to park the boat, then the RV. They shooed me outside while they changed, and I got the water hooked up in the meanwhile. They came out when they were done changing and I went in, slicked into trunks and a t-shirt, and we were ready. We took a cooler full of drinks and we were off. We cruised out of the no-wake zone and I opened it up. We ran a couple of miles down the lake, and they were ready to ski. Their long t-shirts came off, and the girls were their usual awkward beauty. Jolie was something else. There was nothing awkward about her. I said she was slender, but she was tiny. She was all woman. When she turned to watch the girls go over the back, I nearly lost my mind. She turned and caught me staring. She just smiled and gave me a wink. Done, she asked. Her smile took away the sting. Her teeth were perfect, too. I laughed. For now, you know what you look like, Jolie. I'm a man. She came up and sat where she could talk to me and keep an eye on the girls, too. We spent 3 hours skiing, and Jolie turned out to be very good. She drove the boat while I had my turn, and she was good at that, too. I wasn't as good as either she or the girls. The physics was just against me, but I held my own. We got back to the park and they put on wraps. The RV had a perfectly good range, but the girls wanted to cook outside. We got out the camp stove and I built a fire in the grill on the site. I grilled bratwursts while they cut up and fried potatoes and onions, and opened cans of pork and beans. We had prepared and packed some meals at home, but this was our first night, and camp cooking is always delicious. We sat at the picnic table the site provided, and we were soon like we'd known each other all our lives. Jolie became Jules. That's what the girls called her, and she liked it, and she called me Ollie. The girls mentioned several times that Jules wasn't married, And I finally asked her why. I mean, God, you're gorgeous, funny, smart. You've got your own business. Why hasn't some man snapped you up? She was quiet for a moment. Well, the main reason is Sabrina, she finally said. I was young and dumb, Ollie. I was a senior in college and I thought I had the love of my life. I found out I was pregnant a week before graduation. I wasn't too unhappy. We had talked about getting married as soon as we graduated. I guess that plan didn't work since you're talking about it in the past tense, I said. No, it didn't. 3 days after I told Brad, I found out he'd been cheating on me for a month. I dumped him and never looked back. When Saps was born, I didn't have time for a social life for a while. Then I got caught up in building my business. By the time I could catch a breath and even think about dating, I realized I had this precious gift from God in my life, and I couldn't do anything without considering her. I understand, I said. I feel the same way about Toby. As long as I have her, she comes first. I can't tell you how important she is to me. She's all that kept me sane the last 18 months. She placed her tiny little hand on my arm. I know, she said. She tells Saps and me everything. I'm so sorry, Ollie. Yeah, life sucks sometimes. We both kind of sighed. We looked up and saw two pairs of approving and loving eyes on us. They were in whispered conversation, sitting in camp chairs under the shade of the awning. I love your daughter, I told her. It seems like she's almost mine all the time she spends with us. She loves you too, she said. She told me the other day that you're like the father she never had. When I looked at her, those huge brown eyes had become liquid, and a tear fell down one little brown cheek. I brushed it away with the back of one finger. She's a great girl, I said. I think her mom is a very special lady to have raised a girl like that. She's a very brave one too, doing that by herself. She smiled with those brimming eyes, stood, kissed my cheek, and went to join the girls. We had a great weekend, and when she was pulling out to leave our house, I walked over and tapped on her window. Jules, would you think about going out with me next Friday? I asked. Sap squealed with delight, and Jules smiled that flashing smile. What time? 6, I asked. We'll have dinner and do something afterward, okay? Oh, can Toby stay with Saps while we're gone? Sounds great, and of course. She kissed my cheek and they were gone. Toby was waiting for me in the entry. Well, she asked. Did you mask her out? Did you kiss her? I hound her and smacked her bottom. Yes, I did, and none of your business. She squealed the same sound Saps had made. I knew it. She's perfect for you, Dad. I love her so much, and Saps is like my sister. I shrugged. What happens happens, Toby. You can't force that. Stop playing matchmaker. She snuggled her face into my chest. I know, Dad, but you were never going to do anything but just love me if I didn't do something. Not that I don't like being the only woman in your life. I laughed. Well, you're always going to have a place in my heart no one else can touch. You're my baby, and that's never going to change. She purred and snuggled me for a minute, then went off to do Toby things. Our first date went well. I took her to play racquetball. She was new to the sport, but she played tennis and the stroke mechanics were much the same. Once she got used to the rolls and hitting off the walls, she was good. Being a natural athlete sure didn't hurt. She was as fast as lightning, and she could change directions much quicker than I could. That was where being tiny played to her advantage. We were cooling down at a table outside the courts after we finished drinking and resting. She grabbed her phone. Let's snap the kids, she said. We posed with our rackets and goggles and she took a snap. They answered right away and we had a good memory. We both showered and I took her out to eat. It was very good Italian and we made pics of ourselves. We were finishing our wine, Jules sitting beside me in the booth, and we just leaned back, talking quietly and relaxing. It felt natural for me to put my arm around her, so I did. She scooted over against me and smiled up at me. I thought again how cute she was and I realized she was always going to be cute. This was something that wasn't going to change as she aged. She leaned over to me when we pulled up at her house and looked up at me expectantly. I could tell she wanted me to kiss her, so I did. I wanted to kiss her even more than she probably wanted to be kissed. It was a long one and a delicious one. Her lips were plush and soft, and she tasted like wine and cherry chapstick. As we drew apart, I noticed the drapes move. I think we have an audience, I mentioned. She giggled, sounding very much like her daughter, or maybe her daughter sounded like her. I'm not surprised. You know they're trying to hook us up, right? Do you mind? I asked. She blushed. No, I like everything I know about you, Wally. Me too, I said. We better go in there before they tear down the drapes. We went out every Friday for 4 months. We were getting closer and closer, and I wanted to move our relationship along. I didn't want to push her, but some of our sessions were getting pretty steamy at the end. I also discovered that I liked having her for a friend almost as much as I liked having her for a girlfriend. We talked on the phone constantly. She would snap or text me funny little things or just a few words several times a day, and I did the same. I would see something or hear something and know that Jules would get a laugh out of it, so I needed to share it with her. We were becoming very intimate, and I knew everything about her life as she did mine. We started having dinner together, all of us, every Tuesday, and we would just hang out, play games, and I was almost as in love with Saps as I was her mother. They were very alike, and if you knew one, you knew the other almost as well. There were subtle and major differences, but they were both completely charming, and the differences just emphasized the similarities. Life was great, and the only cloud was the continued presence of Rachel. She was still part of Toby's life, so perforce of mine. I wanted nothing to do with her, and the sight of her irritated me. She never failed to try to talk to me every time she came to pick up Toby, or I dropped her off at her grandparents'. She was still living with them. She lost her job along with Jerry at the clinic, and she was working at another private one across town. If she irritated me too much, I'd ask her if she'd heard from him. That quickly put a damper on her attempts. "How long is it going to take for you to forgive me?" she asked on one such occasion. "Forgive you? For what?" I asked. "As far as I know, you don't believe you did anything wrong. Not one time have I heard, 'I'm sorry, Oliver, I was wrong. I'm sorry I tried to make Toby believe you were a liar. I'm sorry I tried to take her away from you, tried to rape you in the divorce. And worst of all, I've not once heard, 'I'm sorry I cheated and slept with that dirtbag behind your back.' I didn't hear it then either." She could take no responsibility for her actions. I didn't really know what forgiving her would entail. I was reconciled and at peace. I didn't forget, but I sure wasn't going to waste a minute being bitter about it. People have the right to do dumb stuff. They have the right to divorce you, dump you, end their friendships with you, and you just accept it and move on. People do crappy things every day. In the heat of the moment, I wanted to punish both the cheaters, but I quickly got beyond that. Their punishment was being who they were. They had to live with themselves. I fully intended to live with myself, and that meant putting the lying and cheating behind me and living my best life. Rachel was an unhappy woman, and I sincerely wished any bad luck in the world on dear old Jerry, but it wouldn't come at my hand. Let God or the universe punish them. I was out of that game. She became even more unhappy when she discovered that I was dating Jules. I had dropped Toby off at her grandparents' for the night, and she came out to the car and stopped me. "I hear you're dating one of Toby's friend's mother," she said. I just looked at her. "Is it true?" she asked. "That's my business," I said. "The hell it is," she snapped. "I'm your wife. I have a right to know." "You have crap for rights," I told her. "You aren't my wife. You found your soulmate, and it wasn't me, remember? Then this thing called a divorce happened. My business is no longer yours, and yours is none of mine. Be quiet, Rachel. Don't stick your nose in mine again." I was steaming when I left. I told Toby what had happened. She was just as pissed off as I had been. That ended my dropping her off at her grandparents' or Rachel picking her up at her house. Bob or Cindy, the grandparents, came to our house and got her from then on. That took away a major source of stress in my life. On our 7-month anniversary of the trip to the lake, I took Jules out. We went to a nice restaurant and out to a club. She didn't drink much, just a beer now and again or one drink. She had 2 that night. I raised an eyebrow when she ordered the second. She laughed. "Yeah, I'm wild and crazy tonight, huh?" "You're perfect, just like you always are," I said. "Do you really think so, Ollie?" She bent her head sideways in that way she had. "Fez, I think you're pretty perfect too. If I'm so perfect, why haven't you invited me to spend the night?" I must have looked pretty startled because she laughed. "Have you not even thought about it?" I found my presence of mind. "Yeah, Jules. I've thought about little else since that first day on the boat when I saw you in that bikini. When we started dating, I realized you were something different. Something special. And I didn't want to pressure you or scare you off." "You won't scare me off," she said. "I told the girls not to wait up." "Really? Well, what are we doing here?" I asked. "Oh my God, Jules. Let's get out of this place. Do you want to spend the night with me?" She blushed as she took my hand and allowed me to pull her to her feet. More than anything else in the world right now. She practically melted herself into me as we made our way out, and she leaned over with her head on my shoulder and holding my arm all the way home. I let her out when we pulled into the garage, and she was pressed up against my side all the way to the bedroom. I turned her around at the foot of the bed and kissed her. It was one of the most incredible kisses I'd ever had, and it went on and on. When we stopped to breathe, she looked up at me, and I drowned in the warm brown pools of her eyes. She put her arms around my neck and looked in my eyes. "Make love to me, Oliver," she said. "I'm kind of afraid." "Don't be," I told her. "I love you, Julie Barnes. You know that, right?" "I thought you did," she murmured. I needed to hear it. "I love you too, Oliver." We fell asleep in each other's arms, and twice during the night we made love again. Once when I initiated it and once when she did. I awoke the next morning lying on my back with an angel sprawled half over me, her hair covering us and her cheek pillowed in the hollow of my shoulder. I just watched her sleep, playing idly with her hair until she opened her eyes. She snuggled in and moaned, "I belong here, Ollie." "I know," I said. "Would you like to wake up here every morning?" She opened her eyes and looked at me. "You mean like live together?" "No, sweetheart." "Well, yes, but I mean, will you marry me, Julie Barnes?" She brought her little left hand up between her faces and wiggled her fingers. "Oh no," she said. "Something seems to be missing." "Hold that thought," I said. I started to get out of bed. "I'll hold the thought," she said, "but I can't hold something else. I need to pee so bad." I laughed and swatted her butt, making her squeal. "Go then, meet me back here." She scampered off, a little naked sprite, and I went down to my office, stopping to use the facilities myself. I got what I'd come for out of my safe, and when I got back, she was a little ball under the covers. I climbed in and took that left hand again. I looked in her eyes and saw only love there. "Julie, will you marry me?" I slipped the ring on her finger. It was too big and we'd have to resize it, but it would do for now. She held it up and looked at it. "It's beautiful," she said. "It looks old. Where did you get it? When did you get it?" "Remember I told you I was going to an auction?" I said. "It was about a month ago." "Yes, I remember. They were auctioning off an estate, right?" "Yep, what I didn't tell you was I saw this ring in the catalog, and I went with the intention of buying it and asking you to marry me. It was made in England about 1810 for the Duchess of Avon. It has a long history. Do you like it?" "I love it," she said. "It's the most beautiful ring I've ever seen." "Are you going to answer my question?" I asked. "What?" "Oh yes, Oliver. Yes, I'll marry you. Oh my God, yes." I laughed and squeezed my fiancée in my arms. "We need to snap the girls," she said.